A cold wind blew through the streets, carrying the soft sound of Christmas music from decorated houses and shops. Lights twinkled on trees, and the air smelled faintly of baked cookies and pine. People hurried past carrying shopping bags, laughing with family, or taking pictures to capture the festive moments. But in one quiet corner of the park, a small child sat alone on a worn-out bench, hugging her coat tightly. She shivered, but it was not only from the cold. Her eyes were fixed on a photograph she held, an old picture that had seen better days. The edges were bent, the colors faded, but the faces in it were precious to her. It was a photo of her parents. She had lost them some years ago, and since then Christmas had lost its magic. Each year she tried to hold on to memories, but every smile around her reminded her that she was alone. Today was no different. Families strolled past, parents holding their children's hands, grandparents laughing with grandchildren, and couples walking close together. She watched silently, feeling a mixture of longing and sadness. The photograph was small, yet in it her parents looked alive, happy, and full of love. She traced the outline of their faces with her fingers and whispered their names softly. She missed their voices, their warmth, and the way they had always made Christmas feel special. She tried to remember the songs they had sung, the stories they had told, the laughter that had once filled her home. But the memories were fragile, slipping through her fingers like snow. She sighed and hugged the photo to her chest. Around her, the park glowed with lights, but it all felt distant, like a world she did not belong to. She wished she could disappear, or that somehow her parents could come back for just one more day. Her eyes grew wet and a tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, hoping no one would notice. Unnoticed, for now she was alone in the crowd. But far from the park, a car drove slowly along the street. Inside, a man in a finely tailored coat looked out of the window. He was known in the city for his wealth and business success, but tonight, he felt restless. He had avoided the usual Christmas parties, the public events, and the bright crowds. He liked to spend the holidays quietly, reflecting on the year past and planning for the year ahead. But something made him slow down as he drove past the park. Something he could not quite explain drew his attention. He saw a small figure on a bench, shoulders hunched, hands holding something closely. Even from a distance, he could sense the loneliness, the quiet sorrow in the way the child sat. He felt a tug at his heart, a sudden awareness of a world outside his own, a world where wealth and power could not buy warmth or comfort. Without thinking, he pulled the car to the side and stepped out, walking toward the child. The child noticed him approaching and instinctively pulled the photograph closer. Her heart raced. Most adults hurried past without seeing her, and some even seemed annoyed by her presence. But this man walked slowly, gently, as if he had all the time in the world. He stopped a few feet away, crouched down to her level, and smiled softly. "Hi there," he said, his voice calm and kind. "What's that picture you're looking at?" The child hesitated. She was not used to strangers asking her about her parents with such gentleness. Most people either ignored her or looked away. She glanced at him, then back at the photograph and whispered, "It's my mom and dad. They aren't here anymore." The man nodded slowly, his eyes softening. He understood more in that moment than words could express. He had lived a life of business deals, meetings, and important decisions. But here was something far more important, a small child's heart breaking quietly in the cold. He wanted to do something, anything, to ease her sadness, even just for a little while. He sat beside her on the bench, careful not to crowd her space. The wind blew stronger, and he offered her his scarf, but she shook her head. She did not want charity. She wanted someone to listen, to understand, to remember her parents with her. And so they began to talk, slowly at first, sharing memories like fragile pieces of a puzzle. The child spoke of small things she remembered, Christmas mornings when her mother baked cookies, the songs her father would sing by the fireplace, the way their home smelled of cinnamon and pine. She spoke of gifts wrapped with care, of laughter echoing through the rooms, of bedtime stories that made her feel safe. Each word was like a small light in the darkness of her current loneliness. The man listened quietly, asking gentle questions, letting her lead the conversation. He shared a few stories from his own childhood, though carefully chosen to make her smile without overwhelming her. He spoke of quiet moments by the fireplace, of his own parents, and of small joys he had once taken for granted. They laughed softly together at memories of small, silly things, and for the first time that evening, the child felt a little lighter, as if a small part of the loneliness had lifted. She looked at him with wide eyes. Do you have a family?" she asked cautiously, curious but careful. He smiled faintly. "I do in a way. But sometimes even grown-ups feel alone on days like this. That's why I stopped to talk to you." Her lips curved into a small, shy smile. For a moment she forgot about the cold, the empty apartment she would go back to, and the aching absence of her parents. Here was someone who saw her, someone who cared enough to stop and listen, someone who treated her sadness with respect and kindness. The minutes passed slowly, like gentle waves against the shore. The man asked about her life, about her school, about the little things that usually went unnoticed. She spoke about her favorite books, the small joys she found in drawing and the dreams she carried quietly in her heart. He nodded and encouraged her, making her feel that her hopes, her feelings, and her memories mattered. Even as they talked, the world around them continued in its Christmas celebration. Families passed by. Children squealed with delight, and the glow of the lights reflected off the snow-covered ground. But in that small corner on that worn-out bench, the child and the man were in a world of their own. A world where sorrow could be shared, where kindness mattered more than gifts or decorations, where one person's presence could make a lonely heart feel seen. As the evening deepened, the cold seemed to grow sharper, and the lights in the park glimmered more brightly against the night sky. The man noticed how small and fragile she looked against the vast world around her. He realized that in all his wealth and success he had never felt the quiet, aching longing of a child missing her parents. And he understood with sudden clarity that sometimes the greatest gift one could give was simply presence, attention, warmth, and a listening heart. The child, sensing his sincerity, relaxed slightly. She told him about her apartment, about the quiet evenings alone, and about the small ways she tried to remember her parents' love. The man listened, never interrupting, never offering hollow words. He felt a growing determination to make this evening memorable for her, to give her a glimpse of the joy that Christmas could still hold, even in the absence of her family. He looked at her carefully, noticing the small details, the way her fingers clutched the photograph, the way her eyes glistened in the cold light, the way her small shoulders hunched against the wind, and he thought about what he could do to bring a little warmth into this quiet sorrow. The idea formed gently in his mind, a simple thought with the power to change her night. He would find a way to bring Christmas to her, to make her feel the joy she had lost, even if only for a few hours. For the first time that evening, the child felt a small spark of hope. She did not know who he was or why he had stopped, but she sensed that something kind and rare had entered her life. She looked at him again, and a quiet trust began to grow. In that moment, the cold, the loneliness, and the emptiness of the day seemed to fade just slightly, replaced by the warmth of human connection, the simple, powerful magic of being seen and cared for. And as the lights of the park shimmered around them, the child felt for the first time in many Christmases that maybe, just maybe, this night could hold a small miracle. The wind continued to blow softly, carrying the distant sound of laughter and music from the streets. The child clutched her photograph tightly, but now, a small warmth had begun to creep into her chest. She looked at the man sitting beside her, noticing the calm expression on his face and the way he seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. It was strange because most adults she met were always busy or hurried, never stopping to really listen. "I don't get many visitors here," she said quietly, her voice almost lost to the wind. "Most people just pass by," he nodded. "I can see why, but I'm glad I stopped tonight. I think it's important to notice moments like this. People like you, people who feel small and alone, they deserve to be seen." The child blinked, unsure how to respond. She was not used to being noticed in this way. Most people simply ignored her, assumed she was a lonely child who would go away on her own. But his words were soft and sincere, and they made her feel for the first time in a long while that someone understood. She shifted slightly, turning the photograph in her hands. "I miss them a lot," she said. "Every Christmas I try to remember. But it's hard. Everyone else is happy and I'm just not." Her voice cracked and a tear slid down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed to cry in front of a stranger. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, offering it gently. "It's okay to feel that way," he said. "You don't have to hide your feelings. Missing someone shows how much you loved them. That's something very special. The child hesitated, then took the handkerchief. She dabbed at her eyes, trying to steady herself. "Do you know what it's like?" she asked softly. "To have people gone and to feel like no one really cares?" He paused, looking down at the small figure beside him. "I do," he admitted. "Not in exactly the same way, but I understand what it's like to feel alone when the world seems full of happiness that isn't for you. Sometimes adults forget what it's like to be a child, and we forget how much a kind word or a gentle moment can mean." The child studied him, sensing the honesty in his voice. She had learned to be cautious around adults, to expect disappointment, but something about him was different. He didn't seem busy, distracted, or impatient. He simply listened, and that made her feel safe. "Do you want to come somewhere warmer?" he asked after a pause. "I know it's cold here, and you shouldn't have to sit out in the wind all alone." The child's eyes widened. She had never expected an offer like that. She glanced down at her coat, thin and worn, then back at him. "Really?" she asked. You mean it?" he nodded. "Yes, come with me. You don't have to be alone tonight. I promise it'll be safe and warm." Her heart skipped a beat. She had learned to be cautious, to doubt offers from strangers, but something in his voice made her trust him. Slowly she nodded, gathering her belongings. The photograph stayed clutched in her hands, as if letting go might somehow let go of her parents too. As they walked together through the streets, the man kept a gentle pace, letting her adjust to each step. He talked quietly about the lights on the trees, the snowflakes drifting down, and small cheerful things happening around them. He didn't rush her, didn't try to distract her from her grief, but simply walked beside her, sharing the world in a way that felt comfortable and safe. The child's curiosity began to peek through her sadness. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice low. "To a place where you can be warm and where Christmas can feel a little magical again," he replied with a soft smile. "I want tonight to be special for you." Her eyes widened further and she looked up at him. "Special?" she repeated. "I haven't had a special Christmas in years." He nodded. "That's why tonight matters. We can make it a night to remember. You deserve that." When they reached the car, he opened the door for her and helped her inside. She had never been in such a large, comfortable vehicle before. The seats were soft, and the warmth from the heater began to chase away the cold that had been biting at her fingers and toes. She let out a small, surprised laugh, realizing how much she had missed feeling warm and cared for. As they drove through the city streets, he spoke quietly about small things, the lights in the windows, children playing, the smell of food from nearby shops. He didn't talk about his wealth, his work, or anything that might make her feel small or out of place. Instead, he focused on the simple joys of the season, creating a bridge from her loneliness to the comfort of connection. The child listened, occasionally asking questions about the lights, the streets, and the people they passed. She began to forget for a little while the ache of missing her parents. The conversation, gentle and natural, gave her something she hadn't felt in years: companionship. When they finally arrived at a large, beautifully decorated house, the child gasped. It was the kind of place she had only seen in movies, with a grand Christmas tree shining through the windows, lights twinkling on the roof, and a warm glow that seemed to welcome her in. She hesitated at the doorway, clutching the photograph to her chest. The man smiled and gently took her hand. "Come on," he said softly. "Tonight you're not alone. Let's make some new memories." Inside, the warmth wrapped around her like a soft blanket. The scent of pine and cookies filled the air, and she felt her chest lift with a small spark of hope. Volunteers and helpers were quietly arranging decorations and preparing treats, but they stopped and smiled at her, making her feel included rather than stared at. The man guided her toward a table where cookies were waiting. "Why don't we start by decorating some?" he suggested. "It's fun and it'll give you a chance to relax and enjoy the evening." The child's face lit up with a small, shy smile. She had not felt this way in years. Her fingers were clumsy with icing at first, but she laughed at her mistakes, and the sound was light and genuine. The man sat beside her, decorating cookies as well, encouraging her gently without taking over. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged, like her presence mattered. As the evening continued, more people arrived quietly, friends of the man who had volunteered to help. They didn't overwhelm her or make her feel out of place. Instead, they joined in small, cheerful ways, singing Christmas songs softly, sharing stories, and creating a warm, safe environment. The child began to relax completely, laughing, talking, and even forgetting for brief moments, the ache of loss that had shadowed her for so many years. The man noticed her growing comfort and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had not planned this night for attention or recognition. He had simply wanted to make a difference for one lonely child. And now, seeing her laugh, seeing her eyes brighten, he realized that the simple act of noticing and caring could change a life more than any gift or material thing ever could. At one point, the child paused and looked around, a small sense of wonder in her eyes. This is amazing," she whispered. "I've never had anything like this." He nodded gently. "I'm glad you're enjoying it. You deserve every bit of it." She hugged the photograph to her chest again, but this time she also reached out and held his hand briefly, a small gesture of trust and gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "For noticing me." He smiled and squeezed her hand gently. "It's my honor," he said. "Everyone deserves to be noticed, especially on nights like this." As the evening went on, they sang songs, shared stories, and decorated more cookies. The child even helped hang ornaments on the tree, placing them carefully with a sense of pride. She felt included, valued, and most importantly, not alone. For the first time in a long while, she could imagine happiness. Even if just for this night, the man watched quietly, making sure she had space to explore, to feel joy, and to experience a sense of belonging. He realized that true generosity was not about money or gifts. It was about attention, care, and the willingness to step into someone else's world, even for a short while. By the time the night had deepened, the child was smiling openly, her eyes bright, her laughter echoing softly through the grand hall. The photograph of her parents still sat nearby, but now it seemed less like a symbol of loss and more like a reminder of love that still existed in her life, both from the past and now in the kindness of the man who had chosen to step closer. The warmth inside the house wrapped around the child like a soft blanket, and for the first time in years she felt completely at ease. She looked around with wide eyes, amazed at the lights twinkling on the Christmas tree, the ornaments that shimmered with every color, and the faint scent of pine and cookies that filled the air. It all felt magical, like stepping into a storybook she had only ever imagined. The man noticed her awe and smiled quietly. He had expected her to be curious, but the depth of her wonder surprised him. He could see the loneliness that had weighed on her for so long slowly easing, replaced by small sparks of joy. He decided to let her explore the room, to let her feel the magic on her own terms while he stayed nearby, silently observing and ready to support her if she needed it. She moved closer to the tree, running her fingers along the strings of lights, each one reflected in her wide, curious eyes. She touched the ornaments, admiring the care that had gone into every detail. Some were shaped like stars, others like tiny bells, and a few were handmade, colorful and uneven, but somehow perfect. She reached for a small ornament shaped like a snowflake and held it to her chest, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. The man approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt her fascination. "Do you like it?" he asked gently. She looked up, her face lighting up. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I've never had a Christmas tree like this before." He nodded. "Then tonight it's yours to enjoy. You don't have to worry about anything else. Just be here, be present, and let yourself feel happy." Her small smile grew and she nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. She had been alone for so many holidays, feeling invisible, but tonight she mattered. Tonight someone cared enough to step into her world and make her feel seen. Soon the man led her to a table filled with cookies, icing, and sprinkles. "How about we decorate some cookies?" he suggested. "It's fun and you can make them however you like," the child eagerly agreed. She sat down, rolling dough carefully, although not perfectly, and began to shape stars, hearts, and little trees. She laughed softly at her mistakes, and the man joined in, making playful shapes and encouraging her creativity. The simple activity, filled with laughter and warmth, made her forget the sadness she had carried for years. She felt included, valued, and cared for in a way she never thought possible. As they decorated, the man asked her gently about her life. She hesitated at first, unsure how much to share, but something in his calm, patient demeanor made her open up. She spoke about her small apartment, her quiet evenings alone, and the little traditions she had maintained to remember her parents. She told him about the books she loved, the drawings she made, and the dreams she had quietly tucked away in her heart. He listened with care, never interrupting, never judging. He asked small questions, encouraging her to share more and celebrated her joys, however simple. "That sounds wonderful," he said. "It's clear you have a big heart and a lot of talent." Her cheeks flushed slightly, unused to receiving such genuine praise. She had been lonely for so long, used to her feelings being ignored or dismissed. Now she felt recognized, her dreams acknowledged. She began to relax fully, laughing freely and decorating cookies with more confidence. Later, the man led her to another room where volunteers had quietly prepared a small gathering. There were other children, but this room was calm, filled with soft music and warm light. She watched the other children for a moment, unsure, but the man knelt beside her and whispered, "You can join in if you want. If not, it's okay. Just be comfortable." She took a deep breath and stepped inside. Slowly, she began to interact with the other children, sharing cookies and smiles. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. She laughed when a cookie she had made broke, and another child offered her one of theirs in return. She felt a sense of connection, small but meaningful, and it warmed her more than any blanket could. Throughout the evening, the man stayed nearby, watching and guiding subtly. He made sure she was safe, happy, and included without being overbearing. He noticed her small victories, the smile she shared, the shy laughter that emerged, the way she interacted with the other children. Each moment was a reminder of how much simple kindness could change a life. At one point, they returned to the main room where the grand Christmas tree stood. The child's eyes sparkled as she looked at the presents carefully arranged underneath. The man knelt beside her again and said gently, "These are for everyone, but tonight they're for you too. You don't have to open them all, just take a moment to enjoy." She hesitated, unsure how to respond. Gifts had never meant much to her. She had spent so many Christmases alone, receiving nothing and feeling forgotten. But tonight was different. She realized these gifts were not just things. They were symbols of care, thoughtfulness, and the effort someone had made to bring joy into her life. Slowly, she picked up a small box wrapped in shiny paper. She untied the ribbon carefully and opened it. Inside was a simple set of art supplies, colored pencils, sketchbooks, and small paints. She gasped softly, her eyes lighting up. "These are amazing," she whispered. "I've always wanted these," the man smiled quietly. "Then you can create whatever you imagine. Remember, your dreams and your creativity matter." She clutched the box to her chest, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. It wasn't just the supplies, it was the thoughtfulness, the care, the recognition of her interests and her talents. For the first time in years, she felt seen not just as a lonely child, but as someone who mattered. The evening continued with gentle songs, laughter, and more shared moments. Volunteers brought hot chocolate and cookies, and the children sang softly along with the music. The child participated hesitantly at first, then more confidently, her voice blending with the others in a small, heartfelt harmony. She felt a sense of belonging she had never known, a warmth that reached deep into her heart. As the night deepened, the man noticed her growing comfort and realized that the most meaningful gift he could give was not the presents, the decorations, or the warm room. It was his attention, his care, and the space he had created for her to feel safe and loved. He had stepped into her world when she felt invisible and made her feel important. That simple act had created a ripple of change that would stay with her long after the lights dimmed. At one point, the child sat quietly near the tree, holding her photograph of her parents. She looked at it, then back at the man and whispered, "I wish they could see this. They would have loved it." He knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "They would be proud of you," he said softly. "And in a way, they are here with us tonight, in the love and joy we share." She looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes, but this time, they were not only tears of sadness, they were also tears of gratitude, relief, and a small growing happiness. She realized that although her parents were gone, the love she remembered had not disappeared. It had simply found a new form in the kindness of someone who had chosen to notice her. The man watched quietly as she hugged the photograph to her chest, feeling a connection between past and present. He realized that sometimes the most profound impact one could have on another person's life was simply being there, listening, and caring. It required no grand gestures, no wealth, no fame, just presence and compassion. As the night wore on, the child became more relaxed, laughing freely with the volunteers and other children. She shared stories of her past, her dreams for the future, and even some of her small fears. Each time she spoke, the man listened carefully, offering encouragement and validation. He noticed her growing confidence and the way her sadness had softened, replaced by curiosity, hope, and a sense of belonging. Eventually, the volunteers began to prepare a small dinner, and the child sat with them, enjoying the warm food and conversation. She felt included in ways she had never imagined possible, and she realized that this night was more than just a Christmas celebration. It was a turning point. For the first time in years, she felt truly connected to the world around her, supported by someone who had chosen to step closer when she felt most alone. By the end of the evening, the child was smiling openly, her eyes bright and her laughter genuine. She held her photograph of her parents close, but it no longer felt like a weight. It felt like a bridge connecting the love she had lost with the love she had found. She looked at the man, her heart full of gratitude, and whispered, "Thank you for everything tonight. I've never felt this happy in so long." He smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction that went far beyond any success he had achieved in business or life. "It's my honor," he said softly. "You deserve to be seen, to feel safe, and to experience joy. Never forget that." As the night drew to a close, the child knew that although her parents were gone, the world was not entirely cold and lonely. There were people who cared, people who could bring warmth and light into her life even when she least expected it. And most importantly, she realized that small acts of kindness could create a lasting impact, transforming loneliness into hope, sadness into joy, and despair into love. The child's eyes sparkled as she looked around the grand room, still taking in the warmth, the lights, and the gentle hum of music. For a long moment, she just stood there, holding her photograph close and breathing in the cozy atmosphere. She had never imagined a Christmas like this, one filled with light, laughter, and care. The man watched her quietly, feeling a quiet satisfaction and a growing determination to make the evening even more memorable. "Would you like to see something special?" he asked softly. The child looked up, curiosity mixing with a hint of hesitation. "Special?" she repeated. He nodded. "Yes, something that will make tonight a Christmas you will always remember." Her eyes widened. She had never had someone take such care to make her feel included before. She nodded slowly and he held out his hand. Together they walked toward a side door, leading to another part of the house that she had not yet seen. As they entered, the child gasped. The room was filled with decorations, more lights than she could count, and a large, cozy fireplace glowing warmly. Stockings hung carefully along the mantel, each one unique, and the scent of cookies and hot chocolate filled the air. A table was set with treats and soft music played in the background. Volunteers moved quietly, arranging small games and activities, but their smiles were warm and welcoming. This is amazing," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man smiled. "It's all for tonight. You don't have to worry about anything. Just enjoy it." She looked around, her hands trembling slightly with excitement. She had spent so many Christmases feeling invisible, overlooked, and alone. Now here she was, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and care. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, and it made her heart ache in the best possible way. The volunteers approached her gently, inviting her to join in a small game. At first she hesitated, unsure how to interact, but the man knelt beside her and whispered encouragement. "You can do this. Just have fun and enjoy the moment." Slowly she began to participate, laughing softly as she played. She realized how much she had missed connection, the simple joy of being part of a group, and the reassurance that she belonged somewhere. Each laugh, each smile strengthened her sense of hope. After the game, the man suggested they decorate a gingerbread house together. The child's eyes lit up. She had always loved the idea of building something with her hands, creating something beautiful, but she had never had the opportunity. As they worked side by side, adding candy and icing carefully, she felt a sense of pride. The man encouraged her gently, praising her creativity without taking control. For the first time in years, she felt her ideas and efforts mattered. When the gingerbread house was complete, they stepped back to admire it. "You did an amazing job," he said sincerely. "Look at what you created." The child smiled widely, feeling a warm glow of accomplishment. She looked around the room again and noticed other children and volunteers admiring their own creations, everyone sharing laughter and conversation. The atmosphere was gentle and kind, free from pressure or judgment. She realized that this night wasn't just about decorations or gifts. It was about connection, care, and feeling safe. Later, the man guided her to a cozy corner with soft cushions and blankets. He had arranged a small storytelling area where volunteers read Christmas stories aloud. She sat down, her small frame sinking into the cushions, and listened intently. The stories reminded her of the ones her parents used to read to her, and a mixture of nostalgia and happiness filled her heart. As the story ended, the man suggested a small craft activity. "How about making ornaments for the tree?" he asked. "You can create something to remember tonight." Her eyes lit up and she eagerly began. She carefully shaped small figures from clay, painted them with bright colors, and added tiny decorations. The man guided her gently, praising her work without taking over. Each ornament became a symbol of the night, a small reminder of joy, creativity, and care. As she worked, she glanced at the man. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked quietly. He smiled softly. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially on nights like this. You've been alone for too long, and I wanted to make sure you felt seen and valued." She nodded slowly, a tear escaping despite her efforts to hold it back. I never had anyone do this for me before," she admitted. "That's why tonight is special," he replied gently. "You deserve it." The evening continued with laughter, stories, and gentle music. Volunteers brought snacks and hot chocolate, and the child felt increasingly comfortable, her initial hesitation replaced by joy and engagement. She shared stories about her past, spoke about her dreams for the future, and even laughed at small jokes the man told. Each moment strengthened her sense of belonging, her sense that she mattered, and her belief that kindness could change everything. At one point, the man took her hand and led her to the grand Christmas tree. "Would you like to place your ornaments on the tree?" he asked, her face lit up. Carefully, she hung the ornaments she had made, stepping back to admire her work. Each one seemed to glow in the soft light, and she felt a quiet pride in contributing to the beauty around her. She realized that she was part of something bigger than herself, that her presence had meaning, and that she could create joy even in small ways. Afterward, the man guided her to a table with small wrapped gifts. "These are for everyone here tonight," he explained, "but you can choose one to open now if you like." The child's eyes widened as she carefully selected a small box. Inside was a set of colored pencils, sketchbooks, and paints. Her hands trembled slightly as she held them. These are perfect," she whispered. "I've always wanted them," the man smiled. "Then you can create whatever you imagine. Let your creativity shine. Remember, your dreams matter." She clutched the gifts to her chest, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. It wasn't just the items. It was the thoughtfulness behind them, the recognition of her interests, and the care that had gone into choosing them. For the first time in a long while, she felt fully acknowledged and valued. As the night drew on, the volunteers began to prepare a small dinner. The child sat at the table, surrounded by warmth, conversation, and gentle smiles. She realized that this night was more than just a celebration. It was a turning point. She had felt invisible for so long, but tonight she had been noticed, included, and loved in a way she had never experienced. The man watched quietly as she laughed with others, sharing stories and enjoying the moment. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had created a space where a lonely child could feel safe and cherished. He understood now more than ever that true generosity was not about wealth or fame. It was about presence, care, and the willingness to step into someone else's world. Later, as the evening came to a close, the man took the child aside. "I hope tonight has shown you that you are never truly alone," he said softly. "There are people who care, who want to bring joy into your life, and who will be there when you need them." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I feel so happy tonight," she whispered. "I never thought I could feel this way again." He smiled gently. "That's because kindness has a way of finding us when we need it most. Remember that, and always hold on to hope." The child hugged her photograph of her parents close, then looked at the man. "Thank you for everything. I'll never forget this Christmas." "You're welcome," he replied. "And remember, this is only the beginning. You deserve happiness, love, and care, not just tonight, but every day." As she prepared to leave the room, she realized something important. Although her parents were gone, their love had not disappeared. It lived on in her memories, in her heart, and now in the kindness of someone who had chosen to step closer when she felt most alone. She understood that love could take many forms and that caring, compassionate people could appear in unexpected ways to brighten even the darkest nights. The man watched her quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had started the evening with a simple act of noticing a lonely child, and now he had seen how one night, one gesture, could change a life. He realized that his wealth and power meant little compared to the simple act of human kindness, the ability to bring warmth, laughter, and hope into someone's life. As the night ended, the child left the grand house with a small group of volunteers guiding her safely. She held her photograph and her gifts tightly, her heart full of new memories, hope, and joy. She knew that this Christmas would be remembered forever, not just for the presents or decorations, but for the love and attention she had received, the understanding she had felt, and the knowledge that someone truly cared. For the man, the night had also been transformative. He had learned the true value of generosity, the power of presence, and the lasting impact of kindness. He had seen how a small act, simply stepping closer to a lonely child, could create a ripple of joy that would be remembered for years to come. And he knew that he would continue to bring hope and care into the lives of others, quietly and sincerely wherever he could. The morning after Christmas Eve dawned softly, with the first light of the sun reflecting off frost-covered windows. The city seemed quiet and calm, a peaceful contrast to the laughter and warmth of the night before. The child woke up in her small apartment, clutching the gift she had received, her heart still full of the joy and care she had experienced. She looked around at her simple surroundings, but now they did not feel quite so lonely. The memories of the previous evening lingered like a gentle warmth, a reminder that kindness could reach even the darkest corners. She carefully opened her sketchbook, picking up the new colored pencils she had received. The page came alive under her fingers as she began to draw, recreating the Christmas tree, the decorations, and the warmth she had felt. Each stroke brought back laughter, the glow of the fireplace, and the gentle guidance of the man who had shown her that she mattered. For hours she sketched and colored, losing herself in the memories, but also feeling a sense of hope for the future. Meanwhile, the man, back in his usual routines, could not shake the thought of the child. Though he had returned to meetings and planning, his mind often drifted to her smiling face, her quiet laughter, and the stories she had shared. He realized that the impact of that evening extended far beyond a single night. It had reminded him of the power of simple acts, the way one person's attention and care could shape another person's life in ways money or influence never could. Days turned into weeks, and the child's life began to change quietly. She felt more confident, more willing to speak to others, to smile, to accept help when offered. She returned to school with a new sense of purpose, sharing her art and ideas with classmates. Her teachers noticed a subtle but powerful difference, the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity, the way she engaged with learning, and the quiet confidence she carried. She still missed her parents, but the loneliness that had once consumed her had softened, replaced by hope and connection. The man, quietly following up on her well-being, arranged for small surprises that would continue to bring her joy and support her growth. He ensured she had books, art supplies, and opportunities to pursue her interests. All of this was done without fanfare, without drawing attention, simply to remind her that someone cared. The child's world began to expand in small, meaningful ways, each gesture reinforcing the lessons she had learned on that magical Christmas Eve. One day, she received a small note tucked inside a package of new sketchbooks. The note was simple, written in kind, clear words: "Keep creating. Keep dreaming. You matter." It was unsigned, but she knew who it was from. She held it close to her heart, feeling a quiet connection to the man who had chosen to see her, to step closer when she felt invisible. The message reminded her that kindness was not always loud, and sometimes the smallest words carried the most weight. As months passed, the child's confidence grew. She began sharing her artwork with friends and teachers, receiving praise and encouragement. She joined small community projects, helping others in ways she had once imagined but never experienced. Her life, once quiet and isolated, became filled with small connections, each one reinforcing the lesson she had learned: that love, care, and attention could make even the hardest times bearable. The man continued his quiet involvement in her life, never imposing, always observing and supporting in subtle ways. He knew that the greatest gift was not material. It was the ability to help someone believe in themselves, to remind them that they were worthy of joy, respect, and love. Over time, the bond between them deepened, built on trust, shared experiences, and a profound understanding that a single evening could change the trajectory of a life. One afternoon, as the child prepared for a small art exhibition at her school, she reflected on the journey she had traveled since that Christmas Eve. She thought about the cold park, the photograph of her parents, and the moment when a stranger had seen her and chosen to care. She realized that the night had not only given her gifts and warmth, it had given her belief, confidence, and the courage to dream. The exhibition was simple, but it held great significance. Her artwork was displayed with care, and she shared her stories with classmates and teachers. She spoke about her experiences, the inspiration behind each piece, and the emotions that had shaped her creations. Her audience listened quietly, captivated by her honesty and talent. For the first time, she felt her voice mattered, her presence was recognized, and her creativity celebrated. After the exhibition, she returned home and carefully placed her favorite drawings in a safe place. She smiled softly, feeling the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment and the lasting warmth of the man's influence. She understood that the night of kindness had set into motion a series of changes that would continue to guide her life, shaping her into a confident, compassionate, and creative individual. The man, observing from a distance, felt a quiet pride. He had not sought recognition, nor had he expected gratitude beyond the child's smiles and joy. Yet seeing her grow, witnessing the impact of a single evening of attention and care, brought him a sense of fulfillment deeper than any business success or public acclaim ever could. He knew that true generosity was measured not in wealth, but in the ability to change a life through simple, thoughtful actions. Years passed, and the bond between them remained strong, built on trust and mutual respect. The child, now a young adult, often reflected on that Christmas Eve as a turning point. She remembered the cold park, the photograph, and the warmth of someone noticing her when she felt invisible. Those memories shaped her into a person who valued kindness, who understood the importance of care, and who sought to bring joy and support to others whenever she could. She pursued her dreams, inspired by the support and recognition she had received. She created art that expressed her experiences, emotions, and hopes. Her work began to touch the lives of others, spreading the same quiet, transformative power of kindness she had received. She remembered the lesson that a single person's attention could change a life, and she carried it forward in everything she did. The man watched quietly as she flourished, proud of the courage, creativity, and compassion she had developed. He knew that the Christmas Eve encounter had been more than a moment of generosity. It had been a seed of transformation, planted carefully and nurtured with care. Seeing her succeed, feeling the lasting impact of his actions, filled him with a quiet contentment he had rarely experienced in his busy life. One evening, years after that Christmas Eve, the young woman returned to the park where it all had begun. She sat quietly on the same worn bench, holding a small photograph in her hands. Not of her parents this time, but of herself, happy and confident, smiling with warmth and hope. She whispered a quiet thank you into the air, acknowledging the man who had chosen to step closer when she felt most alone. She reflected on the journey, the loneliness, the grief, the small moments of joy, and the transformative kindness that had changed everything. She understood now that life was fragile, unpredictable, and often difficult, but that love, care, and human connection could heal, inspire, and guide. She felt gratitude not just for the gifts or the warmth she had received, but for the simple, profound lesson that someone noticing you, taking the time to care, could create lasting change. The man, watching from a distance as he often did, felt the same quiet satisfaction. He knew that the greatest impact of wealth and influence was not in material possessions, but in the lives transformed through attention, kindness, and care. He had stepped closer that Christmas Eve, and in doing so, he had changed a life, and in that act, he had found a deeper meaning for himself. The young woman returned home that evening, inspired to continue creating, helping, and sharing kindness wherever she could. She understood that the love she had once thought lost had transformed into new forms, connections with those who cared, acts of compassion, and the courage to dream and hope. She held her artwork close, smiling softly, knowing that her life had been changed forever by the simple, profound gift of attention and care, and so, The story that began on a cold Christmas Eve, with a lonely child clutching a photograph and a man stepping closer, concluded not with grandeur or spectacle, but with the quiet, lasting transformation of a life. The child had grown, the man had learned, and the world in its small corner had been made warmer, kinder, and more full of hope because one person chose to notice, to care, and to act. It was a Christmas that neither would ever forget, a night of true magic, and a reminder that even in the coldest, loneliest moments, kindness could light the way and change everything.